I'm gonna go.
Can you get there?
Back
Yeah,
here.
you're good.
How are we doing? Amar, is this a good place? Can you see me?
Your head's a little cut off.
My head is cut off. Okay.
You sit in my lap.
Get closer. Oh, yes, I was supposed to light a candle too, but that's all right. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Community Church of Boston. Even if we're a day late, $1 short, and we had car trouble, we're still determined to do a broadcast of this service every Sunday morning with elegance, grace, and style, and we're determined to get there. We have the keep it simple, stupid version, but we're working hard. And I want to acknowledge and welcome a new member of our team. His name is Amar Ahmad, and he's over behind the laptop, and he is helping us greatly with our broadcasts and our feeble attempts to join the 21st century. And a lot of other things, incredible help with programming. Amar has worked for a long time at Mass Peace Action and done a bunch of great webinars and broadcasts for them. So it's really a pleasure to have Amar here live, I think for the first time on a Sunday morning, although he's helped us with other events during the week a bunch of times. Anyway, welcome. On a bizarre Sunday where it's 72 degrees and we even have to use the AC on November 6th. It's good that we have beautiful brand new AC, but it's also pretty strange that we're using it at this date. Enough said about that. We also are very happy that we met our goal of sending out 300 postcards handwritten on the back to the state of Texas.
Yes.
It was a monumental effort, but we got them out Thursday. I hope they get there by Monday. We got them out over a lot of time, so most of them got there on time, but Thursdays might be a little close, but that's all right. We want to tell you also about this beautiful thing that's happening here in the auditorium. It's called Spaces of Refuge and Resilience, the Luminous Art of Diane Esmond, also known in France as Diane Esmond. How did I do? This is the mother of our good friend and presenter and Victor Wallace, and she was a remarkable painter with a career that spanned 80 years from 1901 to 1981, something like that. And we have a whole lot of her paintings in there. They're all for display and for sale. All proceeds to our ongoing enormous, what do you call it, deferred maintenance projects on this building that we're making great progress on, and we're very proud of it. So come and see any Monday, Wednesday, Friday during the day, our beautiful gallery display of incredible paintings, impressionist, post-impressionist, abstract, all kinds of just great things. I want to tell you about a couple other events going on. Next Sunday, we honor Mark Solomon, who has spoken at Community Church more than anybody else, even Chomsky and Zinn, who spoke here just about every year for 20 years during the 80s and 90s. But Mark Solomon will be joining us in a post-election analysis. We will use a neutral word for whatever it is that's going to happen. And I really invite you to be here physically, because we are having a luncheon to honor Mark and Pauline, and we are going to chauffeur them to this place, and we are going to honor Mark's enormous record of talks and sermons and speeches at the Community Church of Boston over the course of over 40 years. It starts in the mid-60s. So that's next Sunday. The Sunday after that, we commemorate Trans Day of Remembrance. And we have a speaker who was one of my son's teachers in middle school at the Mission Hill School. It's Letta Neely, who will be joining us for as the keynote speaker for that day, Trans Day of Remembrance. Let's see, am I forgetting anything? Yes, I am forgetting something, which is Saturday, November 19th. We co-sponsor Scott Ritter right here in this room. And this is a very alternative voice on the narrative about Ukraine and Russia, and very, very strong opinionated voice. And we urge you to either be here physically, I'm sure it'll be a great turnout, or else join us virtually as you can for every event that we celebrate or commemorate here at Community Church. So that's all I have for announcements to say, except that I wanted to share with you that so a joy and a sorrow. The first joy, Lula, and the sorrow, Netanyahu. But I want to focus on the joy, because I heard the interview with the photographer Sebastião Salgado, and I don't know if you know this Brazilian man's work, but it is just so remarkable. And he was being interviewed, celebrating the possibility of a tiny hope for the Amazon and for life on Earth, a little bit less compromised than if it were the other dude. And it reminded me that Salgado, that we have in this building an incredible library of big coffee table sized early 20th century photographers that we inherited from Bob Datilio. And we have one Sebastião Salgado, and I was going to share it with you. I'm not going to share it with you, but it's just these incredible, vivid black and white photos of the Amazon and other parts of the world. It was nature photography and photography of First Nation untouched peoples in not only in Brazil, but Papua New Guinea and other places in Africa. And it's just a remarkable book. And I'm going to put it out for those of you who are here present, and invite those of you who are not to come in and see it. And also, eventually, when we have a library that's available to the public up on the third floor to peruse some of this incredible collection of photography, art, architecture books. Bob was also interested in everything under the sun, especially things anarchist and things Sacco and Vanzetti and things 20th century left. Also very interested in Mussolini, that many books, and fascism, that many books. He was Italianist. And so I just wanted to tell you about Sebastião Salgado and about our library of books that are going to be displayed here. We're sort of taking a weird tack right now. We're having an event November 27th, Sunday after Thanksgiving, celebrating Bob Datilio. And we have a lot of not only books, not only primary source historical material about Sacco and Vanzetti, which he studied assiduously his whole life, but we also have a mountain of books, many of which we have to get rid of, and we've decided that if we want to get rid of it, we'll put it down here in the auditorium and make it available for you for whatever contribution or lack thereof that you would like to make. A lot of books and a lot more coming. And over the course of the next months, all the way through the holiday, we'll be trying to reduce our inventory as best we can and keep the really good stuff for us to hold on to and enjoy. T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. Truth be told, I know nothing about T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland, but I'm hungry to learn. And it's the 100th anniversary. And there's some other 100th anniversaries that have happened recently, like the Community Church of Boston, founded in 1920. We were going to have a big 100th anniversary wingding, but COVID kind of put the kibosh on that a little bit. So we need to figure out how to celebrate ourselves over the course of, let's say, the next decade. We'll just keep partying. But The Wasteland is from that very same time, and I think it speaks to a lot of the same reasons that Community Church was founded in 1920, right after First World War, and in the beginning of a whole new era. So I want to introduce David Gullette to introduce this beautiful event that we've put together, and we just welcome these four poets. The Poets Theatre has presented a number of events here at Community Church. The two that stand out in my mind are the one that was Boston Abolitionists, and then there was the one that was all young hip hop folks. So now we have an entirely different topic that we're just looking forward to hearing about from our good friend David Gullette, and he will introduce the distinguished cast. But I want to say just one thing about one of them, and he's right here in front of me. And I just have never met Lloyd Schwartz in person. It's just like a real treat, because we've heard his glowingly, lovingly presented, beautiful music reviews on Fresh Air for all those decades. And I can't think of anything I heard on the radio that touched me like those reviews of musicians. And so that's the one thing I want to say. I could probably, if I knew them better, say really nice stuff about the rest of the cast, but I will let David Gullette do that. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm David Gullette, the literary director of the Poets Theatre, which was begun in 1950. So we're not 100 years old yet. Let me first introduce our actors. Ken Cheeseman and Paula Langton I met early in the career of the Actors Shakespeare Project. We were in a production of Measure for Measure over at the Jorge Hernandez Cultural Center off Columbus Avenue. It's great fun. It's an old church turned into a theater. And it was so wonderful to working with these two wonderful actors and the entire crew. Lloyd Schwartz doesn't need an introduction. He's also a member of the Poets Theatre Board of Directors. Why are we of the Poets Theatre staging a reading of this old war horse of a poem that dropped like a bomb on the bridge that was supposed to link Victorian to 20th century poetry in English? According to poet and teacher Mary Carr, almost nobody under 50 has read the poem or has even heard about it. It's packed with gloom and a profound sense of loss, that's true. But it's also got a strange beauty, a haunting music. So we ask you this morning only to listen carefully. As his biographer, Peter Ackroyd, says, Eliot cultivated an auditory imagination. So kindly open your ears. T.S. Eliot had a long career as a poet, playwright, and critic, but his two most famous poems, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock and The Wasteland, were both written before he was 35. He was born in Missouri, but found himself later becoming more English than the English, joined the Church of England. He adored tradition. And like many writers of his generation, and I'm thinking now of Yeats and Pound and even D.H. Lawrence, Eliot drifted farther and farther right, even as other European intellectuals were yielding to the siren songs of racial purity, spiritualism, fascism, anti-Semitism, and comparable forms of nasty mumbo-jumbo. So The Wasteland is a young man's poem born during the high flowering of what we might as well call modernism. The bits and pieces of this poem, what he calls these fragments, are assembled like the pre-World War I collages that Picasso and Braque and Juan Gris and Picabia were experimenting with around 1913, before the war. Those of you unfamiliar with the poem may wonder how the various parts of the poem fit together, or if in fact they fit together at all. The poem presents a wide range of voices or characters, which makes it a lot of fun for a group of actors to play with. All four of us have acting experience, and two of us, Lloyd Schwartz and myself, are poets. So get ready to meet lots of voices from that period in the wake of World War I. People in the early 20s had been traumatized by the wholesale butchery of the recent war, had seen thousands, even tens of thousands, die in a pandemic, had seen societal beliefs change at a dizzying pace, and old institutions found incapable of meeting the needs people felt. Oh my goodness, I could almost be describing us right now, couldn't I? An early draft of the poem was entitled, to borrow a phrase from Charles Dickens, "Hey, do the police in different voices." Like someone telling you what happens in a crime movie you haven't seen by voicing all the characters. Hey, do the police. Hey, do NYPD. That voicing is our job this evening. We invite you to watch us get immersed in the poem and invite you to join us. You're going to hear some foreign phrases in this poem, mostly German and French and Italian. And if you really want to know what they mean and where they come from, I suggest you read the notes that Eliot had printed at the end of the first edition of the poem in 1922. Attentive listeners will also hear echoes of Shakespeare here and there, largely from Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, and The Tempest. But you don't need to be an English major or have a PhD in comparative literature to enjoy this poem. Finally, a short reflection about what happens when poets and actors work together. It's been really exciting for the four of us to bring two professional actors, Ken and Paula, together with two poets, Lloyd and myself, who are used to reading solo. The actors have been charged up, electrified by being asked to voice scripts with unusually powerful language. And the poets have found their ordinary speaking voices drawn to something closer to music as they tune their vocal instruments to meet the tonalities and energies of the two actors. For me, this has been the essence of what a poet's theater should aspire to, with the two camps, poetry and theater, joining forces and being mutually changed in the process of finding common ground, or rather, inventing a new landscape where grand language can shine. We hope to find a little time at the end for Q&A, if you like. T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, Lloyd?
The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot.
For Ezra Pound, Il Miglior Fabbro.
1. The Burial of the Dead. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Starnberger Sea with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin gar kein Russenstamm aus Littern et Deutsch. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousin, he took me out on a sled and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains there, you are free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter.
What are the roots that clutch What branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning, striding behind you, or your shadow at evening, rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust.
Frisch weht der Wind der Heimat zu, mein Irischkind, wo weilest du?
You gave me hyacinth first a year ago. They called me the hyacinth girl.
Yet when we came back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing, looking into the heart of light, the silence. Ut und leer das Meer.
Madame Sosostris, famous clairvoyante, had a bad cold. Nevertheless, is known to be the wisest woman in Europe with a wicked pack of cards.
Here,
Said she.
here is your card. The drowned Phoenician sailor. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Look. Ah, here is the belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. Ah, here is the man with 3 staves, and here the wheel, and here is the one-eyed merchant. And this card, which is blank, is something I cannot see. He carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. I do not find the hanged man. Fear death by water. I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. Thank you. If you see dear Mrs. Equitone, tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days.
Unreal city. Under the brown fog of a winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many, I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet, flowed up the hill and down King William Street to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours, with a dead sound on the final stroke at 9.
There I saw one I knew and stopped him, crying, Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Mylay, that corpse you planted in your garden last year, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence that's friend to man, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You hypocrite lecteur, mon semblable, mon frère.
2. A game of chess. The chair she sat in, like a burnished throne, glowed on the marble where the glass held up by standards wrought with fruited vines, from which a golden Cupidon peeped out. Another hid his eyes behind his wing, doubled the flames of seven-branched candelabra, reflecting light upon the table as the glitter of her jewels rose to meet it. From satin cases poured in rich profusion, in vials of ivory and colored glass, unstoppered lurked her strange synthetic perfumes, unguent, powdered or liquid, troubled, confused, and drowned the scents in odors stirred by the air that freshened from the window. These ascended in fattening the prolonged candle flames, flung their smoke into the liquoria, stirring the pattern on the coffered ceiling. Huge seawood-fed cop with copper, burned green and orange, framed by the colored stone, in which sad light a carved dolphin swam.
Above the antique mantle was displayed, as though a window gave upon the sylvan scene, the change of Philomel by the barbarous king, so rudely forced. Yet there the nightingale filled all the desert with inviolable voice, and still she cried, and still the world pursues, jug, jug to dirty ears. And other withered stumps of time were told upon the walls, staring forms leaned out, leaning, hushing the room enclosed. Footsteps shuffled on the stair, under the firelight, under the brush. Her hair, spread out in fiery points, glowed into words, then would be savagely still.
My nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never know what you are thinking. Think.
I think we are in Rat's Alley, where the dead men lost their bones.
What is that noise?
The wind under the door.
What is that noise now? What is the wind doing?
Nothing. Again, nothing.
You know nothing. Do you see nothing? Do you remember? Nothing?
I remember those are pearls that were his eyes.
They're not. Is there nothing in your head?
But oh, that Shakespearean rag. It's so elegant, so intelligent.
What shall I do now? What shall I do? I shall rush out as I am and walk the street with my hair down. So, what shall we do tomorrow? What shall we ever do?
Hot water at 10, and if it rains, a closed car at 4, and we shall play a game of chess, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door.
Oh, when Lil's husband got demobbed, I didn't mince my words. I said to him myself,
Hurry up, please. It's time.
now, Albert's coming back. Make yourself a bit smart. You want to know what you done with that money he gave you? To get yourself some teeth. He did. I was there. You have them all out, Lil, and get a nice set, he said. I swear, I can't bear to look at you. And no more can't I said. And think of poor Albert. He's been in the army 4 years. He wants a good time. And if you don't give it him, there's others will, I said. Oh, is there? She said. Something of that, I said. Then I'll know who to thank, she said. Gave me a straight look.
Hurry up, please, it's time.
Well, if you don't like it, you can get on with it, I said. Others can pick and choose if you can't. But if Albert makes off, it won't be for lack of telling. You ought to be ashamed, I said, to look so antique. Her, only 31. I can't help it, she said, pulling a long face. It's them pills I took to bring it off, she said. She's had 5 already, nearly died, a young George. The chemist said it would be all right, but I've never been the same. You are a proper fool, I said. Well, if Albert won't leave you alone, there it is, I said. What'd you get married for if you don't want children?
Hurry up, please. It's time.
Well, that Sunday, Albert was home. They had a hot gammon and they asked me in to dinner to get the beauty of it hot.
Hurry up, please. It's time. Hurry up, please. It's time.
Good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night. Ta-da. Good night. Good night. Good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night. Good night.
3. The fire sermon. The river's tent is broken. The last fingers of leaf clutch and sink into the wet bank. The wind crosses the brown land unheard. The nymphs are departed. Sweet Thames runs softly till I end my song. The river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony of summer nights. The nymphs are departed, and their friends, the loitering heirs of city directors, departed, have left no addresses. By the waters of Leman, I sat down and wept.
Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song.
Sweet Thames, run softly, for I speak not loud or long. But at my back, in a cold blast, I hear the rattle of the bones, and chuckles spread from ear to ear. A rat crept softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank, while I was fishing in the dull canal. On a winter evening, round behind the gas house, musing upon the king my father's wreck, and on the king my father's death before him. White bodies naked on the low, damp ground, and bones cast in a low, dry garret, rattled by the rat's foot only, year to year.
But at my back, from time to time, I hear the sound of horns and motors, which shall bring Sweeney to Mrs. Porter in the spring. Oh, the moon shone bright on Mrs. Porter, and on her daughter they washed their feet in soda water.
Oh, ces voix d'enfants chantant dans la coupole.
Twit, twit, twit. Dunk, 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 dunk. So rudely forced to rail.
Unreal city. Under the brown fog of a winter noon, Mr. Eugenides, the Smyrna merchant, unshaven, with a pocket full of currants, CIF London, documents at sight, asked me in demotic French to luncheon at the Cannon Street Hotel, followed by a weekend at the Metropole.
At the violet hour, when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine waits like a taxi throbbing, waiting, I, Tiresias, though blind, throbbing between two lives, old man with wrinkled female breasts, can see at the violet hour, the evening hour that strives homeward and brings the sailor home from sea,
The typist, home at tea time, clears her breakfast, lights her stove, and lays out food in tins. Out of the window, perilously spread, her drying combinations touched by the sun's last rays. On the divan of piled at night, her bed, stockings, slippers, camisoles, and stays.
I, Tiresias, old man with wrinkled dugs, perceived the scene and foretold the rest. I, too, awaited the expected guest. He, the young man, carbuncular, arrives, a small house agent's clerk, with one bold stare, one of the low, on whom assurance sits as a silk hat on a Bradford millionaire.
The time is now propitious as he guesses. The meal is ended. She is bored and tired, endeavors to engage her in caresses, which still are unreproved, if undesired. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once, exploring hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response and makes a welcome of indifference.
And I, Tiresias, have forsuffered all and acted on this same divan or bed. I, who have sat by thieves below the wall and walked among the lowest of the dead.
Bestows one final patronizing kiss and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit. She turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of her departed lover. Her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Well, now, that's done, and I'm glad it's over. One lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again alone. She smoothes her hair with automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone.
This music crept by me upon the waters, and along the Strand, up Queen Victoria Street. Oh, city, city, I can sometimes hear beside a public bar in Lower Thames Street the pleasant whining of a mandolin and a clatter and a chatter from within, where fishmen lounge at noon, where the walls of Magnus Martyr hold inexplicable splendor of Ionian white and gold.
The river sweats oil and tar. The barges drift with the turning tide. Red sails wide to leeward swing on the heavy spar. The barges wash drifting logs down Greenwich Reach past the Isle of Dogs.
Va la la, leia. Va la la la, la la.
Elizabeth and Leicester, beating oars. The stern was formed, a gilded shell, red and gold. The brisk swell rippled both shores. Southwest wind carried downstream the peal of bells, white towers.
Va la la, leia. Va la la, leia.
Trams and dusty trees. Highbury bore me. Richmond and Kew undid me. By Richmond I raised my knees, supine on the floor of a narrow canoe. My feet are at Moorgate and my heart under my feet. After the event, he wept. He promised a new start. I made no comment. What should I resent? On Margate sands, I can connect nothing, nothing. The broken fingernails of dirty hands. My people, humble people who expect nothing.
La la. To Carthage then I came, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. O Lord, thou pluckest, burning.
Or death by water. Phlebas, the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell and the profit and loss. A current under sea picked his bones in whispers. As he rose and fell, he passed the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Gentile or Jew, O you who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and tall as you.
5. What the thunder said. After the torchlight red on sweaty faces, after the frosty silence in the gardens, after the agony in stony places, the shouting and the crying, prison and palace and reverberation of thunder of spring over distant mountains, he who was living is now dead. We who were living are now dying. With a little patience.
Here is no water, but only rock. Rock and no water in the sandy road. The road winding above among the mountains, which are mountains of rock without water. If there were water, we should stop and drink. Amongst the rock, one cannot stop or think. Sweat is dry and feet are in the sand. If there were only water amongst the rock, dead mountain mouth of carious teeth that cannot spit. Here one can neither stand nor lie nor sit. There is not even silence in the mountains, but dry, sterile thunder without rain. There is not even solitude in the mountains, but red, sullen faces sneer and snarl from doors of mud-cracked houses.
If there were water and no rock, if there were rock and also water, and water, spring, cool among the rock, if there were the sound of water only, not the cicada and dry grass singing, but sound of water over a rock, where the hermit thrush sings in the pine trees, drip, drop, drip, drop, 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 drop. But there is no water.
Who is the third who walks always beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together. But when I look ahead up the white road, there is always another one walking beside you, gliding wrapped in a brown mantle, hooded, I do not know whether a man or a woman. But who is that on the other side of you?
What is that sound high in the air? Murmur of maternal lamentation. Who are those hooded hordes swarming over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth, ringed by the flat horizon only? What is the city over the mountains? cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air. Falling towers, Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London.
Unreal.
A woman drew her long black hair out tight and fiddled whisper music on those strings, and bats with baby faces in the violet light whistled and beat their wings and crawled head downward down a blackened wall, and upside down in air were towers, boiling, reminiscent bells that kept the hours, and voices singing out of empty cisterns and exhausted wells.
In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing over the tumbled graves about the chapel. There is the empty chapel, only the wind's home. It has no windows, and the door swings. Dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood on the roof tree. Cocorico, cocorico, in a flash of lightning. Then a damp gust bringing rain.
Ganga was sunken, and the limp leaves waited for rain while the black clouds gathered far distant over Himavant. The jungle crouched, humped in silence. Then spoke the thunder.
Da. Data. What have we given? My friend, blood shaking my heart. The awful daring of a moment's surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract. By this, and this only, we have existed, which is not to be found in our obituaries, or in memories draped by the beneficent spider, or under seals broken by the lean solicitor, in our empty rooms.
Da. Diadvam. I have heard the key turn in the door once, and turn once only. We think of the key, each in his prison. Thinking of the key, each confirms a prison. Only at nightfall, ethereal rumors revive for a moment a broken Coriolanus.
Da! Damiata! The boat responded gaily to the hand expert with sail and oar. The sea was calm. Your heart would have responded gaily when invited, beating, obedient to controlling hands.
I sat upon the shore, fishing, with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my lands in order?
London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down.
Poi si è scossa nel fuoco che li affina. Quando fia muti che li... Oh, swallow, swallow, le prince d'Aquitaine à la tour abolie.
These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Why, then I'll fit you. Hieronymo's mad again. Data, Diadvam, Damiata.
Shanti.
Shanti.
Shanti. Thank you so much. Do you have questions or thoughts or?
Really is marvelous. Opens up the entire poem. It's done.
What do you get? What do you get? I'm just curious, like,
We'd love to, let me just say, open this to a dialogue in the chat, or else, which we can read, or else the people who are physically present. And I will pass the ice cream cone around the room. Go ahead, sir.
I've studied this poem most of my life, and I have not gotten it most of my life, but this made it clear as can be. I've always, in my own mind, it's T.S. Eliot's profound depression and the failure of his marriage. So that combination of being under that tremendous stress, but it's also the end of the war, all of European culture, everything he studied in school, his wish that he could belong to the culture that taught him all that beautiful poetry, and it's gone. It's 19th century and it's just gone, along with the happiness of his marriage, along with his feeling just dreadful, and yet beautiful words keep coming to him. And the fragments from the past and their hopes for the future, and then the incipient conversion. It's not taking place in this poem, but it's coming. And it's coming in the water and the rocks passages. They're just stunning. So 4 quartets is starting to take shape in this.
Yeah.
And the way you partitioned it and the way you performed it is just revelation. Thank you.
Credit where credit is due. David did all the assignments and worked it all out in advance for us.
But our cast, we've only had 2 rehearsals. But they were extremely exciting rehearsals. And Ken and Paul in particular were just, this is so much fun.
I think
Yeah.
we would have both more rehearsals and more exposure.
We're open. Have scripts will travel.
Well, we did film it and it'll be on the YouTube channel, but it's
Okay.
not a real kind of professional production.
This is-
We'll
As
work
best we
on
can.
it.
We'll work on it.
It does make much more sense.
It makes a lot more sense with the different voices because you don't imagine that it's all supposed to be one unified voice, which it isn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you think about what a collage is, it's in a way found pieces from your life slapped on a canvas in a particular order. And it is fragmentary, but then a lot of modern music from this period is also fragmentary. And the question is, I guess the question remains whether the fragments do hold together. That's for each of us to answer.
Well, it's not a poem that I know well, but I do feel that I understand some of its structure just from the fact that Paula Langton is such an amazing actor for the women's voices. It puts into perspective the whole sex and death, the themes of sex and death. And it does seem to me that the women get a lot of the weight of the post-war awfulness.
Yes.
And it seems quite, what shall I say? I mean, I don't think of it in terms of his own life. I think of it in terms of just the way misogyny after the war seems to have driven some part of this story. And of course, misogyny goes deep into a culture so that 2 women can both reflect it. And then I guess the other themes that come through very clearly have to do with uncertainty about a future after such destruction. And there, I think the way you all did the rocks in the water themes was just marvelous. I mean, I think there's more water in the past. Your Elizabeth and Leicester on the water, for example, that water seems to have flowed more easily in the past. And I just think that's his relationship to the, to history and to all of comparative literature. So those are my first thoughts, and thank you so much for enabling them.
I would, you go.
I just want to add to the, right into it. I just want to add that the water and the dryness struck me so much about today.
Yeah.
Just the whole passage about aridity and the lack of water. It seemed like the whole world was dried out, and that's what's happening to us now.
Made me very thirsty.
And it's sort of extraordinary, that passage, because it's isolated from all of the characters, all of the sexual talk. It's all by itself. And it's really a portrait of a devastated landscape.
It does sound like the thunder at the end is the thunder of the coming monsoon season. That's one thought I had. Do you know this wonderful Satyajit Ray, the Apu trilogy?
Sure.
One of the great sets of films. It's about Indian life. There's a wonderful sequence in that, in which Ravi Shankar sits in the back waiting to hit his sitar. And it's been very dry, and there's dust everywhere. And suddenly the first drop of rain begins to hit, and the sitar begins. And Apu looks up, and he also begins to dance, and the rain begins to fall, but it begins to fall. And that sort of sense of the thunder comes, and it is the gods speaking. And those three words, the da, the data, the damyata, that is the thunder speaking to humanity. And then comes the rain. Of course, this is not a poem that ends on an up note. It really doesn't. But, and the word shanti, Eliot says that the word shanti at the end translates in English as the peace that passeth understanding. Okay, but it is
Sweet Thames flow softly. Over and over. Is that a quote from something before T.S. Eliot?
Spencer, doesn't it?
Yeah, Spencer.
Edmund Spencer.
Early 16th century.
Yeah. And it takes me straight to Ewan MacColl, the great British folk singer who married Peggy Seeger. And there's a beautiful song that he wrote that's called Sweet Thames Flow Softly. It's one of the most beautiful love poems I've ever heard. The other one, of course, is The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, made popular by Roberta Flack later on. Ewan MacColl, who passed in maybe the mid-'80s. But Peggy Seeger is still with us. Thanks for that.
As is the Hudson River. The now clean Hudson River, thanks to St. Peter of Seeger.
Yeah.
St. Peter Seeger. Yes, yes. I went over the bridge that they were going to name after him, the Tappan Zee Bridge. There was a big move afoot, but it's named after Mario Cuomo instead. Can you imagine the letdown? Hey, this is New York. What do you want?
Paula, you were going to say something.
The only thing I was going to say is the poem was new to me. Also, I haven't studied it a lot, or if I did, I don't remember. I was absent that day. And I'm over 50. So it was a real kind of crash course in understanding this poem. And it came in the speaking of it. And I noticed, and then these two were unbelievable wealths of, hooking us up with the literary connections, and all of that was so brilliant. But then how does one understand a poem like this? But I did feel when we would read it together on our whole two rehearsals, I would feel things. I wouldn't be able to necessarily tell you everything up from my frontal lobe, but I noticed things in myself. And what I will share with you is since our last rehearsal, well, we've both had COVID, and my oldest friend and who happens to also be my brother's wife just died, too young, exactly my age. And, after 2 years of aggressive cancer. And I've been kind of doing this. And then I've been with my family all weekend planning the burial of the dead. And I have to say, I did not expect what happened to me today in reading the poem. Going back off of what you were saying, Bob, I understood it so differently today on a human being, emotional. This is what it is. Not whether it's a war, a broken marriage, a life gone. I understood so much as we're going through pictures, fragments of a life, trying to put it together in a narrative to make some sense of a passing. The poem really hit me deeply in a way that I don't know that's the best I can do to put it into my frontal lobes. But I'm grateful for this experience, sandwiched in the middle of, I got to go home and help my brother pick out clothes for what she's going to wear, So.
Well, I had the same.
You must have.
I had the same thought on this line, which is, by this and this only we have existed, which is not to be found in our obituaries or in memories draped by the beneficent spider or under seals broken by the lean solicitor in our empty rooms. He absolutely captures.
It's perfect sense to me now.
Yeah. Yes. The awful daring of a moment's surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just extraordinary what he found.
Yeah. The climax of the poem, as I've always understood it, is the phrase, the awful daring of a moment's surrender.
Right.
That's when the sky really peels open in the poem. It's interesting to note, and I wouldn't be able to tell you where to find it, but Eliot, in his early career, wrote about I don't know if it was the exact words, but to the effect, the awful daring of publishing your poetry. The awful daring of letting that go.
Right.
And his poem, in fact, is his moment of awful daring, revealing.
Yes.
And Eliot, for as much confidence, even somewhat arrogant as we take him, there was something very, very sensitive about what he was doing, how he was going to affect people by sharing something that's very personal and private, So there's also, as pedantic as he might come off sometimes, there's a great humility in Eliot and also in the notes, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's great.
I just wanted to say that I did not expect this, but one of the most moving moments that I found in our reading was your reading of Drip, Drip.
Yeah.
And that you usually hear it as drip, 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 but you could just hear that water slowly beginning to descend. It was very moving. I loved hearing it.
Feelings that are bubbling up about our time right now. And is there someone like a T.S. Eliot who is writing about, at some point would be, we'll find out, if we're all still alive, a similar poem about the horrific times we've been through. not just COVID, but you know who. And just the whole what's happening in our country.
Yeah.
Let's hope Bob Dylan is at home working on it right now.
This gentleman up front has
Yeah.
had his hand up for a while.
I don't know anyone who's writing. Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
We need a poetic voice that will speak for us.
Yeah.
And about what we've been through.
Mm.
And I haven't heard it yet.
Going through.
And well, yeah, still going through, right?
So much of what many people have said, it resonates for me. Go back to the commentary that I think you made, David, and you too, Paula, on the fragmentary nature of this poem. And I haven't read it in years. I did glance at it this morning before coming, but I had not realized it was so fragmentary. It is like a vase that has been dashed on the floor, and you just rake up the shards. And if you're lucky, you might find one that was next to another, but who knows? And at the time that he was living, what you said about what was happening in his life, which I was unaware of, you can see how this vessel was coming apart. And the references which suggest that, something does in fact string these things together is really kind of a fleeting, hopeful hypothesis. I mean, is there really any continuity at all? Or is the sum of our lives really a sum of fragments? And the continuities are just ideas that we have and nothing more. And I forgot what the idea was already. And
great.
I think that we're the times then are redolent of the times now. Very interesting what you just said. Is Bob Dylan back in his lair? It's it's a real quintessential question. Are our lives really nothing more than a collection of fragments? And the continuities are continuities that we make, but are they really there?
There's a line of Lloyd reads at the end of the poem.
Go ahead. No.
These fragments I have shored against my ruin. It's like piling fragments up against the bottom of a ruin so the wall won't collapse. So they're fragments, but it's what we've got. To shore something up means to keep it from collapsing, right? These fragments I have shored against my ruin, my ruins. My ruins. No, yes, not the culture's ruins, my personal ruins. And his first wife, by the way, she had serious mental problems, so that the almost hysterical woman in the middle of the poem, what should we do now? What should we ever do? I shall go into the streets, my hair down like this, and that sort of frantic, and the voice tries to calm her down. But what solace can you offer in the middle of a larger crisis and a personal crisis?
Thank you so much for this polyphony that you put together. And Paul, thank you for inducting me personally into this at the beginning. You were the first voice, but holy shit, I realized like 3 lines in, this is very different from what I expected. Very different. And when you were reading the tarot cards, it was like, holy shit. I've never seen that before.
By the way, we forgot when she says thank you. Previous. Her a dollar.
Nobody paid me.
Makes for living reading. Tarot cards. And she also you have to be so careful these days.
But then the voices continued. It was just marvelous.
A brief question about a reference. There was one line that stood out, and I wondered whether I only remembered it from this poem, or whether it was read from many.
That's from Dante's
Dante.
in the Purgatorio Tourist. It really is. And Virgil is taking him through Inferno.
Oh, okay.
And he looks up and he sees this incredibly long line of dead men. Wow. Rest we have. By the way, in the back corner, is Mike Stephan, who directed a one version of a reading that we had of The Wasteland at the Cambridge.
Not American are people like Czeslaw Miłosz and Adam Zagajewski, who are the great humane but also political poets.
Yes.
Both no longer with us, but who seem to be dealing with those questions more immediately than American writers are.
I was thinking of how there's in the center of the poem is this dialogue that Paula reads, where she says, "What are you thinking? You never say anything." And she goes on and on about it, and it's significant, isn't it, that there's no contact between the sexes in the poem that is friendly.
Reciprocal contact.
Friendly or reciprocal or flowing. It doesn't flow. There's no water.
Wow.
The guy from work is all over the young woman,
That's right.
but she's not responding.
But she's thinking of something else.
Yeah.
Like she's
Glad
glad
that's
it's
over.
Right. So it's like in Midsummer Night's Dream, where the discord between Titania and Oberon has polluted the entire biosphere. Right.
We are their
There's no
parents and
connection
original.
between men and women.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. When shall we start?
Right now.
This is so rich.
Yeah.
And just to be also honored by all these people who love words, just as these poets do, and just as T.S. Eliot did. I want to tell you that on the third floor, we have an enormous collection of Bob Datilio's poetry books, which David Gullette is sort of appraising and purveying for us. And would love to take anyone physically present upstairs to show you a little bit of Bob Datilio's enormous collection of primary source materials on the Sacco and Vanzetti case, and also boxes and boxes that we haven't really decided where to display or where to get rid of. And some of them are right here on the wall. We did bring down the occult and witchcraft and Satan worship section. That one is there. I think we're going to let that one go. There's also enormous amount of the classics, Greek and Roman stuff, and there's about 30 Dom DeLillo and Elmore Leonard, and who's the other one that he loved? Come on, John Le Carré. Collector's items, huh? 50 cents a piece for sale in front of Brattle Bookshop. Yeah. With that, maybe it's time to enjoy the beautiful soup of a chicken or a vegetarian version that Luis Guzman has prepared for us. For any of you who would like, who are on the broadcast, you can contribute to our efforts here at our website, which is communitychurchofboston.org. There's a PayPal and a credit card option. We also have this beautiful gallery display if you want to see it on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We'd love to show it to you. All the painting. No, some of them are not for sale. In fact, there were several that in 1940 were confiscated by the Nazis and not returned until after the war. I think these that are on that wall or in that category are not, but everything else in the 2,000 square feet on the wall is for sale. Nothing to say except that thank you again so much, and thank you for being with us in the audience. Roll up the credits for Amar Ahmad, who helped us with the broadcast, and for Charlie Welch, our permanent tech geek and clerk of the Community Church of Boston. We'll up sheet for our email list as you walk out, or if you want through the chat, you can send us your email address. And that's it. Meeting at the building is soon over. Amen. 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 Amen.